start us off today well, with a proposition that, on the surface, sounds like the absolute antidote to a good time. I want to talk about paperwork.
Oh boy.
Well,
You were really swinging for the fences with that
I
opening.
know, right? Liability forms, admin logs, taking notes,
Right.
the whole bureaucratic 9 yards.
I can feel people hovering over the skip button as we speak.
I know, but just stay with me here. Because the stack of research we're diving into today, it's a training module called 9 Tools for Christian Care Mentoring. It takes all that boring admin work and just completely flips it on its head.
It really does. It's a fascinating pivot.
The whole premise is this. What if filling out a form wasn't just a chore? What if paperwork was, in fact, a spiritual discipline?
And that's such a powerful reframe. The core theme here is stewardship. We hear that word and we think money, maybe the environment.
Right.
But this text argues that when you're caring for someone who is suffering, specifically, these informal caregivers looking after sick or elderly loved ones, documentation isn't about bureaucracy. It's not about covering your assets.
It's about honoring a sacred story.
Exactly.
And that is our mission for this deep dive. We're not just learning how to, file a report. We're trying to understand how this source material reframes note-taking as an act of genuine care.
And how these specific communication tools are built to protect both the person giving the help and, just as importantly, the person receiving it.
So, just to set the stage for everyone, this guide is for mentors.
Right. People who come alongside those informal caregivers, spouses caring for partners with dementia, kids caring for their aging parents, they're often exhausted, isolated, just operating in this high-stress fog.
They're like the invisible workforce of the healthcare system.
Totally. And the mentor's job is to support them. But the guide makes this really specific, almost counterintuitive claim.
Which is that the way you write down what you hear matters just as much as the listening itself.
That's the key insight.
Yeah.
We tend to think of the conversation as the ministry,
Yeah.
right? And the notes are the admin tax you pay to do the good stuff.
Yeah, the chore.
And the text just says, no. The notes are part of the ministry. They're how you steward that person's life.
To really show this, the text gives us this really compelling story. It introduces us to 2 people, Linda and James.
The case study.
And honestly, this is what made the whole concept just click for me.
It takes it from this abstract idea and makes it, well, human.
So Linda's the mentor, James is the caregiver, and the situation is, it's pretty common. James isn't in some huge crisis, no sirens are blaring,
Wow.
but he's exhausted. He's afraid he's failing his wife. He's just carrying this heavy, quiet weight.
Which is often the hardest kind of weight to carry, isn't it? Because it's invisible. It's the daily grind of pills and appointments and just watching someone you love fade.
So the text contrasts 2 ways Linda could handle her documentation. First, it describes old Linda.
Or maybe Linda before this philosophy really sunk in.
Exactly. In the past, she'd finish her call with James and just rush through the notes. It was paperwork to finish before dinner.
A task to be checked off. A barrier between her and her evening.
But then it describes her new approach. Now she pauses. She actually stops and prays, "Lord, help me steward his story well."
It's a complete mental shift. From task to testimony.
And that shift, it's not just some fluffy language, it shows up in the actual words she types. This is where the text gets really practical.
Yeah, it gives us side by side. A bad note versus a good night.
I highlighted that. Let's break that down because I think we've all been guilty of writing the bad note at some point.
So the bad note, the rushed one, might say something like, James is overwhelmed and discouraged.
Okay, devil's advocate here. That sounds accurate, right? If he's struggling, why is that a bad note?
Well, it feels accurate to the impression, but the text points out it's actually judgmental and vague. You're labeling his emotional state with your interpretation.
You're kind of diagnosing him.
You are.
Yeah.
And you're reducing his whole experience to just 2 adjectives.
It flattens him.
Exactly. Now compare that to the good note, the stewarded note.
Right. It reads, James expressed fatigue and concern about his ability to sustain care. He identified prayer and short daily walks as helpful coping strategies.
The difference is subtle, but it's
If
massive.
it feels completely different.
The second note is factual. It reports what James said, not what Linda.
Not what she felt about it.
Exactly. And this is the crucial part. It highlights his agency. It's not just James is sad. It's James is facing this hurdle, and here's what James is doing about it.
It treats him as an active participant, not just a victim.
Right. And the payoff in the story really drives this home. Weeks later, a program leader checks in with James. And because Linda's notes were so clear and careful, the leader knew exactly what was going on. James said he felt understood.
That's that idea of continuity of care.
Yes. Because Linda treated the notes as important, James didn't have to re-explain his whole backstory to a new person. He felt held by the whole system.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
Having to retell your trauma over and over is, in itself, exhausting.
It's re-traumatizing. Good documentation prevents that. And for Linda, it helped her track his growth. She could look back and see he moved from, say, isolation to cautious hope.
You wouldn't see that trajectory if you just relied on memory.
No, you just remember James is having a hard time. With good notes, you see James is walking 3 times a week now. That's measurable.
So I guess the big takeaway there is that documentation isn't about control. It's about faithfulness in handling another person's testimony with honesty, humility, and love.
It turns the Google Doc into something sacred. It transforms the admin into an act of love.
Okay, so that's the philosophy. But the source, 9 Tools, is also a practical manual. It lays out a specific toolkit.
Right, moving from the why to the what.
There are 4 core tools. Let's run through the first few quickly. Tool number 1 is just the application.
Standard stuff, but vital. It confirms eligibility. And an interesting detail, it requires 2 character references, and one of them must be a pastor.
So it reinforces that this is a ministry role.
Yeah, they want to ensure a certain level of spiritual maturity before letting someone into another person's life.
It's a kind of gatekeeping, but a necessary one, given how vulnerable people are. Then, tool number 2 is the confidentiality and liability agreement.
The boundary setter. And the text emphasizes that both the mentor and the caregiver sign this. It sets the terms of engagement right from the start.
It answers the question, what stays in this room?
Exactly, which is crucial for trust.
Okay, tool number 3 is interesting because it deals with the digital world, the mentor profile.
This is what goes on the ministry's website, and the rules here are super strict about safety and anonymity.
Yeah, the first name rule.
Exactly. The text explicitly says, profiles must include only a first name, no last names, no home addresses, no workplaces.
It seems a little spycrafty, doesn't it? Why so strict?
It's about protecting the mentor in a public space. You want to be accessible, but not vulnerable to stalking or harassment. The profile gives their experience like cared for a parent with Alzheimer's for 5 years. So you find a match, but it doesn't give a map to their front door.
And there's another restriction that caught my eye. It explicitly forbids advertising.
Oh, that's huge. You can't use this platform to sell your essential oils or your consulting business. The motivation has to be pure. You are there to serve, not to network.
Okay, so that brings us to the big one, tool number 4, the communication notes. This is the day-to-day.
This is the heartbeat of the whole process, and the text immediately grounds it in Scripture. It quotes Colossians 4:6, "Let your conversation be always full of grace, seasoned with salt."
Seasoned with salt. It's a classic verse. What does that mean for typing up a report?
Well, think about what salt does. It preserves and it flavors. So your notes should preserve the truth of what happened.
The preservative part.
Right. But they should also be flavored with grace. That means avoiding harsh judgments, avoiding gossip, avoiding any detail that doesn't actually help the care process.
So not writing down, their house was a mess and smelled like cats.
Exactly. Unless the cat smell is a genuine health hazard, it's just gossip. It flavors the care with judgment, not grace.
And the text says these notes serve 3 specific functions.
Right. Consistency, safety, and progress. Consistency helps track goals, like James's walks. Safety creates a paper trail of diligence if something goes wrong. And progress helps the ministry see if the mentoring is actually working.
It's a paper trail of care. But how do you actually write these grace-filled notes without it taking forever?
The guide is super helpful here. It gives a mnemonic, the 3 H's.
Highlights, hurdles, and hopes.
It just cuts through the noise. First, highlights. What was a point of connection? Did they share a good memory? It forces you to look for the good.
That's a great point. It's not just a problem log. Then hurdles.
What's the struggle? Fatigue, financial stress, spiritual doubt. You have to name the obstacle.
And finally, hopes.
What are they looking toward? This orients the note toward the future. It could be a small goal, like getting a full night's sleep, or a spiritual one, like trusting God more. If you get those 3 things, you've got the essence of it.
I like that. It keeps you from just transcribing the whole conversation, which nobody wants to read anyway.
And that leads to the golden rules for notes. They need to be objective, brief, and participant-focused.
Let's drill down on participant-focused. I feel like that's where people can slip up.
It is. The temptation is to write about your performance. I gave James great advice today. I prayed a powerful prayer for him.
I really nailed this session.
Yes, it becomes a diary of your own awesomeness. The text says, stop. The notes are about James's processing this decision, not I'm a great mentor. It keeps the spotlight where it belongs.
The manual also gives two really practical litmus tests. The first is the 24-hour rule.
Complete your notes within 24 hours.
Because our memories are just terrible.
Precisely. Details fade so fast. Fatigue becomes generic sadness. If you wait a week, you're basically writing fiction. Freshness ensures accuracy.
And the second test is the one that really stuck with me. The empathy test.
This is the most powerful editing tool there is. Before you hit save, you ask yourself, would I be comfortable if the caregiver read this?
That changes everything.
It really does. You wouldn't write, James is whining again if you thought he might see it. But you would write, James expressed frustration with the recurring nature of his situation. It forces you to write with dignity.
It's like the grandma rule. Don't post what you wouldn't want your grandma to see.
Exactly. Transparency breeds respect.
So we're building this vault of trust with these respectful, private notes, but then the source material takes a sharp turn. It asks, is confidentiality absolute?
And the answer is a hard no.
This brings in the concept of escalation.
Right. The text draws a very hard line. Confidentiality is maintained until safety is at risk.
And what are the specific triggers?
3 clear instances: self-harm or harm to others, abuse or neglect, and a medical or psychiatric crisis.
So if James says he's thinking of hurting himself, you can't just write that in the notes and pray about it.
Absolutely not. You have to act. And the text uses a really intense biblical metaphor here, the watchman from Ezekiel.
The watchman. Break that down for us.
The idea is a watchman stood on the city wall. If he saw an army, a sword coming, and he didn't blow the trumpet to warn everyone, the blood was on his hands.
Wow.
He was responsible for the lives lost because he stayed silent. And the text applies that directly. If you see a sword suicide, abuse, and you don't blow the trumpet by escalating it, you are failing in your duty.
But I can imagine for a mentor that feels like a betrayal. They trusted you and now you're telling on them.
And the source material knows that. It anticipates that hesitation. And it reframes it beautifully. It says, seeking help is an act of love, not betrayal.
That's the key line.
It is. You are choosing their safety over their approval. Loving someone sometimes means intervening to keep them alive, even if they're angry about it in the moment.
It's the difference between keeping a secret and keeping a person safe.
Exactly.
So assuming we navigate all of this, the notes, the boundaries, the crises, eventually these relationships have to end.
Right. This is the phase they call closing the loop. And there's a phrase here that I think is just brilliant. The text says, endings done with care reinforce dignity, not dependence.
Dignity, not dependence. That strikes me as a really difficult balance.
Well, think about a bad ending. The relationship just drags on. The mentor tries to be the savior forever, and the caregiver becomes totally dependent. They think, I can't survive without Linda.
Which isn't healthy for anybody.
No. A good ending says, look how far you've come. You are capable. You have tools now that you didn't have before. It empowers them.
So the process involves reflecting on that growth.
Yes. Looking back at the notes to see the progress. It means ensuring they have other supports, so you aren't leaving them in a void. And finally, offering prayer and blessing.
It goes back to Linda and James. When they ended, it wasn't a loss. The text says it felt like a handoff.
She was entrusting him to the wider community.
Yeah.
And that's the goal of stewardship, right? You don't own the story. You just hold it for a season with open hands.
We've covered a lot of ground here, from boring forms to Watchmen on the Wall.
It's quite a journey for a topic that started with paperwork.
So if we zoom out, what's the core philosophy we should walk away with?
I think it comes down to the integrity of the narrative. It's about being a trustworthy keeper of secrets, like it says in Proverbs. But it's also about maintaining the professional boundaries that allow for real safe care to happen. It's about respecting the story enough to write it down correctly.
And it's interesting because even if you listening aren't a formal mentor, most of us are listeners for our friends, our spouses.
Absolutely. The principles are universal. The way we remember and retell people's stories matters. Are we characterizing our friends as methy in our own heads, or are we trying to see the hurdles and hopes they're facing?
It challenges the texts you send about people, the way you vent about a coworker.
It really does. It raises the bar.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave everyone with a thought to chew on. This comes straight from the text's reflection section.
It's a provocative one.
The question is this: if you viewed every text message, every email, every note you wrote about someone else as an act of stewardship over their story, how would your writing style change today?
That's a convicting thought. It
Yeah.
might mean deleting a few drafts before hitting send.
I think we could all use a little more seasoning with salt in our group chats.
Agreed.
That is all for this deep dive into the art of documentation. We hope you look at your next form or your next text message a little differently.